Sarah Gaer, I hear you were an uptown girl or maybe midtown girl last night. You saw the Billy Joel final show at Madison Square Garden. How was that?
Oh, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. We had a great time.
What was your favorite song?
I mean, I'm a big uptown girl. I'm not going to lie. And he got out there and he started dancing and it was just lots of fun. So that's always a winner. But I also love Downeaster Alexa.
Great
Well,
stuff.
let's get this show. We got a New York Minute here, John.
All right, let's do it, David.
Welcome aboard Lifelines with David and John, your guide to charting the transformative course of crisis intervention and the game-changing 988 Lifeline.
Well, welcome back. Thanks for joining 988 Lifelines with the podcast with David and John. Look, the water's warm. If you're a crisis junkie, if you're an innovator, if you're a person with lived experience, if you're a policymaker or a provider, this is the space for you as we explore the rich history and the opportunities ahead for both 988 and a full set of crisis care services for everyone who needs help. We're also going to take a candid and sober assessment of the work that we have yet to do ahead. So whether you watch us on YouTube, please like and subscribe, or you listen on another podcast venue, we're glad you're here. And John, we've got an amazing friend and guest today. Tell us about Sarah.
Sarah is an accomplished innovator, speaker, author, an incredibly inspirational individual that's made a huge difference in suicide prevention for loss survivors, men, and so many people in our community. I could not be more delighted than to bring on this fabulous consultant and friend, Sarah Gaer.
Sarah, we're glad you're here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be invited. Thank you, David. Thank you, John.
So, Sarah, one of the things we do to get the program going every week is have our guests tell us something about themselves that maybe the audience wouldn't know.
There's probably a lot, but I will start off with that I am currently fostering 3 adorable but not pretty kittens.
Now, what does that mean, fostering a cat?
So in theory, what it means is that they're very tiny. They lost their mom, so they're very tiny. And so we are getting them ready to be able to be adopted out. So it's a lot of care because mom's not doing it. And I say in theory because in theory, they will get adopted to people that are not me.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that maybe they've already found their home.
It could happen, John. It could happen.
Which is, I don't know if you know this, but that's called a foster fail.
A foster fail.
Well, if you ask the kittens, it's probably a success, though.
Yeah. So,
your husband would say it's a fail.
John, the other thing we do is John and I take a shot, Sarah, at guessing what you're a super fan of. So, John, you're not a super fan of Billy Joel, are you, John?
Well, I think he's awesome, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of classic rock for sure.
Okay, super fan of classic rock. All right, so we have our piece of paper here, Sarah.
Okay.
And we know you better than some of the guests we've had, so we've got some. John, let's take a shot. What do you think?
Yep.
John, write something down, and then Sarah, you have to tell us. John and I want to know who the winner is, or neither one of us were close.
Okay.
All right, so I think Sarah's a super fan.
Oh.
All right, John, what you got?
Tell me when. We ready?
Yeah, you go first. Horses. Now, you can't have 3 things, John. Which is
dogs, horses / dogs, animals. Okay, I'm going to start with horses. You're a super fan, but clearly you like kittens.
That's cheating.
Yeah.
Sarah, I said you're a super fan of Senator Bernie Sanders.
You just drew up.
No, because I'm
He's
fast.
amazing.
I'm very fast. This is, remember when he was at Biden's inauguration and he had the mittens on his hands? So either one of us close, Sarah.
You both win.
Oh.
I love that, David.
Yep.
We're both winners.
John, we're going to talk a lot more about Sarah's work and her impact and her life. But let's start, John. We're brought today. Sarah's here because Behavioral Health Link is sponsoring this podcast. Tell us a little bit about the behavioral health crisis platform, John.
I am glad to do so, David. You know, the Summer Olympics have been on the minds of many, and I've been thinking about how the BHL platform is like the gold medal decathlete of crisis software platforms. It can elevate your call center into a fully capable air traffic control hub for crisis care. It can jumpstart your mobile teams to assure a rapid community connection. It can cast out follow-up care so no one in crisis swims alone. It can pass the baton from your center to outpatient services so the recovery is off to the races. And it can hurdle long waits for crisis beds through our bed registry. Okay, well, maybe it can't run a marathon or sprint, swim, jump, toss, vault, and heave objects just yet. But we're definitely looking into it. Now, what it can do is raise your crisis care system to Olympian levels. And you can learn more about our platform by visiting behavioralhealthlink.com. David?
Great work, John. Sarah, this segment is called The Good News. And this week, we're going to highlight a recent movie, Inside Out 2. Sarah, did you see it?
I have not.
Oh, my goodness. So, John, it's a little bit of a spoiler since Sarah's not seen it, but there was a great podcast by some of the psychologists, psychiatrists who were behind the science. And in that first movie, Riley was much younger and sadness was not being given the space. But in the second movie, John, the star was a new emotion.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. So
You haven't seen it. So the new emotion is actually on the screen. She's anxiety. And I think the way the people behind the movie talked about it was as Riley is a 13-year-old now, coming into this space where you're identifying your role in a new community, and anxiety was the star of this second film. So the two of you haven't seen it, be a great thing to.
I gotta see that. That sounds great.
Sarah,
I mean,
what was that role of anxiety in your teenage years?
Oh, the role of anxiety in my teen years. I think that it was really related a lot to school.
Yeah.
School was a very anxiety provoking experience for me.
I think it's the number one mental health issue among teens right now. It has outstripped depression. And it's ubiquitous in our culture. Not that social media has anything to do with that, but teen years are bad enough. Social media on top of it makes it all the worse.
And of course, the movie, y'all, is about this insight into the inner workings, and they do it through this. There's a control panel, and the various emotions are in there trying to, they're looking through the eyes as if they're like it's a giant robot or something. And John, that begins to hit a little bit into at least an area adjacent to if the emotions are there at the control panel, what's right behind them fueling all that? Why don't you get us started with Sarah?
You've mentioned a little bit about your teen years in school, but what we do know about you, Sarah, and is that you are incredibly passionate individual about trauma and loss, specifically suicide loss, and that you've done incredible work for several years in this area, a lot of innovative work, and people look up to you as a speaker, as a trainer, as a program developer. Where did all this passion come from? Could you talk about some of the origins of it?
Well, I think you already named it, John. I am a suicide loss survivor. I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, which I talk about on some of my other work that people can find if they want to, so I won't take time up here. But my whole life really was lots and lots of trauma and distress, and sort of hit the real boiling point when I lost my best friend to suicide, who was the third friend that I lost in about 3.5 years to suicide. And so I knew I wanted to help people. I felt like from my lived experience, I had some insights into what especially young people were experiencing. And so I had just gotten my first job. It was supposed to be a work study at a girls' residential group home when I got the phone call that my best friend had died. And so I called the group home and I said, thank you so much for this opportunity, but I don't think that I can do this. I just felt that it was too close to home. And then my mom, who is a brilliant, brilliant woman. And when we talk a lot about risk factors, but I think we should talk more about protective factors. My mom has been a huge protective factor for me. And she gave me one of the best pieces of advice that I live by still. She said, Sarah, you can always quit later, but I think you'll regret it if you don't try. And so I took her advice and I tried, and it turned out I just loved the work. And from there, it just one thing turned into another thing, into another thing. Trust me, John, when I tell you, I never imagined my life would be here. But I'm glad that it is. I'm really
the podcast is the pinnacle of your experience. Is what
I was beside myself when I got an email from David Covington asking me to be. You guys are like two of my mental health heroes. So this was a big deal.
I love your mom's advice about quitting later. That is great.
That's a good one. Sarah, another friend in all of this work together is Sally Spencer Thomas. And I'm assuming the two of you met through the loss community.
No.
So tell that origin story, if you would.
Yeah. So I got a job working for a trauma center outside of Boston. And my specialty was going to be men's suicide prevention, which, I was like, what do I know about this? But I really wanted the opportunity to work at that trauma center. So I took the job thinking I'd do it for a couple of years. And so one of the first things they did was send me to the American Association of Suicidology. And my supervisor and really lifelong mentor, Dr. Larry Berkowitz, said, you need to go talk to that lady, Sal, because she's the guru of the men.
She was doing man therapy about that time, I bet.
She sure was. And so I thought, totally begrudgingly, I was like, oh, because I'm not a big fan of gurus usually. But so I was like, oh, fine. It was like a checkbox, right? That way I can go back to Larry and say I did it. And it turned out she was one of the coolest people I have ever met in my life and is truly one of my best friends in the world. So that's how we met.
Well, we're going to talk more about your work in the area of men and suicide and depression, but let's talk a little bit about your work in that loss community. And what have you seen sort of develop in that space over your time since you met Sally?
Well, the big thing in the loss community that I've seen develop, I am developing. So I'm very comfortable with it, which is a concept called soul exhaustion. And even though as I've dug deeper and deeper into the concept, I've realized that there's all different things that can cause people to feel and experience soul exhaustion, it really came to a head for me out of my loss. Because, we talk about the grief, and obviously that's very real. And sometimes people acknowledge the trauma of suicide loss. I don't think we talk enough about the trauma of it, but it felt like neither of those two things were really capturing what happened to who I am as a person when my best friend died. And so I came up with this term. It turns out other people have used it, but they use it in much more of a spiritual way. I'm not using it in a spiritual way. I'm using it according to the other definition of the soul, which is the essence of who you are as a person. And much to my amazement, it has really taken off in the loss survivor community. And I've gotten feedback from people saying this is the first time that there's been language that I felt explained what happened to me when my loved one died. And so I just got home from doing a keynote for AFSP's long-term survivor summit, where it continues to flourish. And I'm really grateful, because it's striking to go to a long-term survivors summit. Because the reason that they're doing it is they'd gotten feedback that there's a lot out there when people first go through a loss, but there's not a lot out there for those of us who have been living with this for a long time. And it was incredibly powerful to be around so many people who are still so deeply impacted by their loss.
Yeah. Describing the experience as we have traditionally of loss in kind of either a trauma framework or in a mental health framework,
right,
really doesn't capture the experience in a way that soul exhaustion does. And I imagine this has been received by so many people, as you were saying, in a way that's like that connects to the experience in a way that's perhaps even transcendent for them. It helps them rise above their feeling as well as connected.
Yeah, and we've done some polling to find out what types of things cause soul exhaustion. And the top two answers are grief and loss. So it makes sense that grief and loss and trauma. So it makes sense that suicide loss survivors would connect so strongly. But there's a lot of other things people have identified, including job loss, going through a divorce, having family conflict, world happenings, right? So it's expanded into a much bigger concept than it was born out of, and I'm really excited about it.
So, John, that brings us to our trivia question for today's podcast. And Sarah, we do an over-under. So we're going to ask John to give a number, and you're going to tell us whether he's high or low. Go ahead, Sarah.
So I have to pick a number.
No, he's going to pick the number, and you're going to say whether he's high or low. And the question for today, you guys, apparently neither one of you watched Disney Pixar movies, but
I did see Soul.
You did see Soul.
It was years ago. It was beautiful, though.
Yeah.
Really beautiful.
So Soul is another characterization. Again, I'm not sure whether you'd say this is spiritual or not spiritual, but it is a different view of the essence of the person, that spark, Sarah, that inner being where emotions and meaning and purpose and so this concept of soul is an old one, John. The trivia question for today is, how old is it? I asked the expert in all things, the god of the internet, ChatGPT, when was the soul first conceived in the human species? When did we first start talking about a soul? And I want you to give the answer. So how many years ago, John? Let's just do how many years ago. The Disney Pixar movie came out about, 6 years or 8 years ago. So it was before. I'll give you a hint. It was earlier than 6 years ago.
It certainly precedes the Christian faith.
It certainly does that.
And I'm thinking Greek times, and it's really hard for me to say. And we're talking ancient Greek times,
right?
But I don't really know.
So the ancient Greek philosophers did talk about the soul. Aristotle, all of them did. They broke it down into pieces. So you're on the right track. Is that where it started?
Well, probably the first record of it. So I'm gonna. It was probably talked well before that, but probably the first record of it was with Socrates, and I don't know what year or years that would be.
So you're going to have to take a guess. I will say I didn't ask for the first documentation. I asked for when humans first conceived of the concept.
Good Lord.
So that could be the
I'm
answer,
sure
John.
GPT knows about that.
Could be Aristotle.
No, I'm okay. And maybe even beyond that with the ancient Egyptians. I can't count that far back. I don't really know how many centuries back that is.
So
David.
the ancient Egyptians, John, that would be about 4,500 years ago. Again, Sarah may know this better than I do. 4,000, 5,000 years ago. I think we're in that ballpark.
All right. Yeah. 4,000. That's Mesopotamia was what, 4,000 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just round it off to 4,500 years ago.
All right, Sarah, is John hitting it right? When did ChatGPT say that humans first conceived of the soul? Earlier than that or later than that?
I think earlier than that.
Yeah, it's earlier, John. So here's what ChatGPT said. First documentation is around the time you're talking about, but it says there's some other things we should look at beyond the written records. There are burial practices and symbolic art that goes back well beyond that, that suggests designs of there's something more than the human body. And
that's when they were saying that aliens came to the earth, right?
So Sarah, ChatGPT believes that humans were conceiving of a soul somewhere between 30,000 and 100,000 years ago. Surprising? Or I guess I would have thought that this came more with the monotheistic religions or a little bit earlier. And no, it's way older than that.
It's not surprising to me because I've actually, in my early days of developing the concept of soul exhaustion, I did a fair amount of research because what I really wanted to know, David, was who killed it? Who murdered the soul? I was super interested because I know historically it's such a prevalent concept for
Right.
humans. And yet in our field, it's almost never talked about.
We're not going to get into politics, are we, Sarah? Killing the soul.
I don't think
Just want
that.
to make sure.
Oh God, no, John, I know way better than that. No. But I mean, in the field of mental health, like where did it go? Especially knowing that, psychology was sort of a break off from philosophy, right?
Right.
And as you said, the philosophers were talking extensively about the soul.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's seen me do my keynote, you know that I went down this, I would say, journey of investigation. Other people might say rabbit hole. To try to figure out who murdered the concept of the soul in the field of psychology.
So in Greek, I believe the word for soul is psyche. So, we have, we've taken the heart out of it. The essence of some of the pieces I think are there, Sarah, but it's great the way that you're characterizing this. So, Sarah, just and John, maybe we'll flip around the questioning thoughts that we were going to and get it more into the soul care right now. But just Sarah, John and I were looking at. I asked ChatGPT, what is the concept of soul exhaustion according to Sarah Gaer, and I was 100% confident that it would say I don't know. And it went on and on about your work. And let me just highlight just a couple of things it said, which we were looking at before. I guess I've closed it now. But it went into the sort of the way that it manifests, what this means, that it's more than a physical thing. It gets into the a mental anguish. John, I'm blanking on some of what ChatGPT went through. As in fact, I may just bring it up.
It mentioned trauma, grief, and loss in there.
Yeah.
It seemed to really, I thought it captured exactly what you're doing really well, Sarah.
I found it here. Let me, so Sarah, here's what it says. Sarah is a trauma specialist and crisis counselor. Describes soul exhaustion as a profound state of emotional and spiritual fatigue resulting from prolonged exposure to trauma and stress. It goes beyond physical tiredness or mental burnout, delving into the deeper, more intrinsic layers of one's being. And then it has a variety of categories: loss of passion and purpose, emotional numbness, decreased resilience, spiritual distress, physical symptoms, and then goes into, and a line that caught me for those of us at Recovery Innovations is healing from soul exhaustion involves nurturing the soul, seeking meaningful connections, and engaging in activities that restore a sense of balance and fulfillment. And there's a significant portion of that matches to our mission statement at Recovery Innovations. So pretty cool. You were talking about the way that your work has taken off within the lost community, and I would say it's gone beyond that, Sarah.
I should pay whoever wrote that. It's really good.
I was wondering, Sarah, too, I mean, the lost community loves it. How has the professional community responded to it? You're really married to traditional concepts.
Yeah, the first time that I got up on that stage, there was a couple of them. The Missouri State Suicide Prevention Conference was one, and then AAS was another. I was scared to death. And I really thought to myself, like, I had to come to terms with the possibility that this was the end of my career, especially because I do, being honest, I do criticize some of what we do in the traditional mental health systems. And I have been absolutely amazed and humbled by the reaction from the professional community. And I just want to differentiate. There's the practitioners, there's the people on the ground doing the work. And then there's the academia research, right? Those people, and they're very different. And And much to my amazement, I've had a pretty strong response from both.
Great.
And also a sense of we're missing this.
It's interesting too that you know the way in which you use soul and soul exhaustion and soul health uh, really kind of transcends the stigma and judgment that often comes with mental health labels, because we can have bad mental health and good mental health, but people don't talk about good soul or bad soul. It's usually more or less soul, and it's
That's
so
right.
it already attaches a person to a conversation where they're much more open, and I would imagine creates conversations with them that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, it's very validating, right? And we know that being pathologized can be a huge deterrent for people who are engaged in the mental health system, and yet we continue to pathologize, right? And there's lots of reasons for it, but this really acknowledges that what you're experiencing makes sense in the context of the things that you have gone through. I had a farmer. I did a roundtable conversation, focus group with a bunch of men, right, wanting to better understand men's mental health, which those are always such a cool experience. And I had a farmer who said to me, just because I'm depressed doesn't mean I have depression. And he proceeded to tell all the things that were happening in his life
Right.
that were causing this for him, right? And so I
It's
thought that
hard.
was, he had a lot of really hard things happening, right? And he was really questioning if he was even who he thought he was, and
Yeah.
why these bad things were happening in his life, and why he felt like he was failing at things. And I didn't have the language then, but now I would circle back to him and say, what do you think about the term soul exhaustion?
Right.
Because it was really what he was describing.
So, John, I love the way you said it's we don't talk about them being good or bad. We do talk about us trading our soul in for something that
Yeah.
Faustian sort of deal, but maybe the opposite of soul exhaustion, at least on some level, or different experiences, joy. You talk a lot about self-care, Sarah. So in our next segment, we're going to look at some self-care practices and tell us if you preach it or you practice it or neither one. So let's
Okay, but
go.
can we differentiate between self-care and soul care?
You tell us if it's soul care or self-care.
Got it.
And whether it's good, it's a good thing for you or not. Mindfulness and meditation.
Can be both self-care and soul care.
And are you into those?
Not as much as I should be, but yes.
I don't know about that word should, but I know where you're going. Second one, karaoke.
Could be either. It could be both.
Yeah.
Could be the expense of others' soul and self-care, though.
That's true.
Yeah.
John, you were with, neither one of you were with us. Sally and I were out till like, oh my God, 4 a.m. in Tokyo doing karaoke one time. 3, physical exercise, walking, swimming.
Tends more towards the self-care bucket, but it can cross over into soul care. One of the things that we talk about in soul care is what we call soul time, which is allowing yourself time to be with yourself. So depending on how the person is practicing that, it could be both.
Yeah. I can tell you, for me, running is soul, self. I wither like a flower when I can't do it. And I can deal with all that hard stuff when I can do it. So, but for most people, it's punishment. So, playing with pets.
I'm going to put that in soul care.
Yeah. So, what the running was self care, but the playing with the pets, Sarah. That now you've got is that because they have some essence there as well?
So the way that I think about the difference between self care and soul care is self care. First of all, we've overused the term. It generally is being referenced to pretty superficial things, but important things. Go to the doctors, get your exercise, eat healthy, drink water, but also take a bubble bath, right? So they're kind of superficial things. Soul care is things that speak to the deepest part of who you are.
Yeah.
Right. So for a lot of people with animals, animals are, that safest connection for them with another being.
Right. What about painting, writing, playing music, those kind of creative expressions?
I do put those into the bucket of soul care.
Yeah.
Because again, it's getting in touch with who you are.
Yeah. And are those practices that you're personally engaged in?
I do a lot of writing. In fact, I'm writing a soul care workbook right now.
It's
So
wonderful, by the way.
Now, nature immersion, hiking, gardening, sitting in a park, while walking, swimming, you put more in self-care. I have to believe the nature immersion, walking in the woods is a different thing, Sarah.
Yes.
Okay. So that one goes, it could be just self-care for people, and that's fine, but it is in our workbook under soul care. It's that connection to your deeper self again.
Yep.
Laughter yoga. I wasn't aware this was a thing.
I think laughter in general can fall under soul care.
Yeah. Rest and sleep. That's a self-care for you?
That's more of a self-care. It's a basic necessity. Like in order to have any health, you have to have those.
Counseling and therapy. Where do you put that?
It could fall into either. For a lot of people, therapy is soul care. That is the place where they are able to really show up as who they are, and they're able to get validated in that. So for some people, it might be just that self-care, but I think it can easily be both.
Yeah. Maybe one more. Spontaneous dance party in the living room.
Well, it's going to include music. It's, I think, going to include being authentic. So I'm still going to put that more in the soul care category.
Yeah, especially if you're not dancing alone, too.
Right.
So, John, where Sarah started when we were talking about Sally and some of her origin, it really kept coming back to working with men and depression and suicide. Why don't you lead us a little bit that direction?
And that's a very special area, I know, to you, Sarah, and to Sally Spencer Thomas. And y'all have done incredible work in that area. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the populations you've worked with and what they're teaching you.
Well, I spend most of my time with public safety. Initially, I was mostly with the fire service. Now I have a contract with the Massachusetts Department of Mental Health to work with law enforcement. So that's where I spend a very big bulk of my time. And with Sally, I do a good amount of work in the construction industry, lots of similarities and also extraordinarily different populations. I would say with law enforcement, I'm incredibly, incredibly fond of them. Even though I have no connection to law enforcement, I didn't grow up in a police family, none of those things. But I've had really the honor to work with them and to have them be vulnerable enough to let me see some of what they've experienced. And I see the battle between wanting to hold on to their compassionate soul and the way that they get battered by their work. And also the way that they get battered by the culture within law enforcement. And so if there's a group of people I've ever seen sort of battling for their own soul, I would say it is law enforcement. And I just have tremendous compassion for everything that they experience.
It's beautifully described. And that is a wrestling match that I imagine occurs daily. And I imagine what really helps with that is that they're going through it together.
Yeah, I mean, we have trauma bonding. We talk about trauma bonding under all sorts of circumstances, right? But law enforcement have a very chronic experience of trauma bonding. And that's some of what, when people talk about that blue wall, that's actually some of what they're identifying is that there's been this trauma bonding. And so, they're protecting each other. And oftentimes they're not just protecting one person, but they're protecting sort of their whole group, right? And so there's been a lot of that connecting through, because it's true. Listen, just like anything else, right? If we haven't done it, we can't understand it. We say that about all things. And it's true of being law enforcement as well. Yeah. The problem is then they spend all their time with each other.
Yeah.
So part of the soul care that I try to give to them is get away from police.
Yeah, good idea. Sarah, let's lighten it up just a little bit for a moment. In your book with Sally, the Guts, Grit, and the Grind, a mental mechanics manual, you use the metaphor car repair and maintenance to try to get through to men. I think evoking a little bit of the chainsaw of man therapy. What's his name, Doctor?
Dr. Mahogany, Rich Mahogany.
Dr.
Oh, Rich
Mahogany.
Mahogany, yes.
Yeah, Mahogany. So, Sarah, a little bit of an interactive segment here for you and John. If we don't take care of the car, well, literally, let's talk about car experiences and if they've happened to you. If yes, what happened, and did you fix it yourself, or did you need help? John, are you ready for a car segment? You don't drive, Brooklyn. You're well, Sarah. We'll do the parts. You and I live in the country where
I find a real man to do the mechanics for me.
Yeah, all right.
I don't even bother with it.
What was your first car, Sarah?
Monte Carlo, 1985 Monte Carlo.
Wow, John.
Oh, it was a Toyota Corolla.
Okay, so first experience, Sarah. Have you had a tire blowout? And if not, have you had a flat tire?
Ooh.
I've had a tire blowout.
Oh, what happened?
I was actually driving on the Mass Pike in Chicopee, Massachusetts, which is right near the Westover Air Force Base. So I'm driving on the Mass Pike, and I thought that I heard a military plane. So I'm driving, and I'm like this, trying to find where it is. And then I feel this big, and my tire went.
Ooh.
Oh, my goodness.
So I did the wrong thing. Now, please be fair. This is before there were cell phones. And the wrong thing that I did is I drove on the rim until I got off the highway.
Oh, no.
But I was okay. The rim was fine. I was okay. But
that's not the worst outcome, Sarah.
No.
But to answer your question, I went to a gas station and I got help putting the donut on the car until I could get to a tire repair.
John, have you had a blowout, John?
No, just really unfortunate flat tires.
What about running out of gas, Sarah? It seems like the easiest thing in the world. I've run out of gas twice. It's very embarrassing. Has it happened to you?
It is one of my biggest fears, and it has not ever happened to me.
Yeah. Well, knock on wood, it won't. I was with Gene Johnson, who was my predecessor at Recovery Innovations, and I ran out of gas. I felt the car lurching. And I'm like, well, it can't be out of gas. And I looked down and the light was on. I guess it can't.
I'll push the envelope with that. But, my wife is like, if it's half full, that means it's half empty. You got to do something now.
What about getting locked out of your car, Sarah?
I not only got locked out of my car. So my son was a baby.
Oh.
And I put him in the Monte Carlo, by the way. And I had put the car keys down on the armrest in order to get him into his car seat. And I locked the door and I shut it. And so I'm looking at my baby in the car and my car keys right next to him.
He was safe. He was protected. Nobody could get in.
Well, and thankfully it was not a hot day. And so, yes, though, I did call for help and I had to have a friend's significant other break into my car.
Like how? What do you mean break in? Like do it this way?
Yeah,
or
it was the old days. No. It was the old days of he got in there with I think it was a coat hanger.
Sleep
with it until it popped.
I'm not going to be surprised at this point, Sarah. Had a brake failure while driving.
I had a car that I know that would just shut off. It was a Buick Riviera. And it would just shut off. I had nothing. I had no power steering. I had no power brakes. It was horrible. And I brought it in several times and they're like, ma'am, there's nothing wrong with your car.
Oh, no.
I ended up just getting rid of it. I was like,
there's something wrong with your car.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my Lord. That's a terrible one. All right, a couple more, sir. A couple more. Have you ever had a windshield crack that literally went from one side to the other?
No.
Yeah. John, Paul Galdus. Paul drives me nuts. He had one of those starbursts and it spread. And then we'd be driving around. I'm like, I'm not driving in this car. It has a crack all the way across. Finally got that fixed. All right. Last one. Have you gotten stuck in either mud or snow?
Oh, of course. Snow.
Oh, right.
Yeah. My Monte Carlo, right? So I had my trunk was filled with kitty litter and a shovel and pieces of wood that I could throw under the tires.
Perfect.
Oh yeah. So you'd go out there and it was like this whole thing of like trying to rock the car out of the ditch.
So, Sarah, tell us more about your work with men and what you've learned. And you told us how you got into this now. That was one of the things John and I were interested in. But as you and working with Sally in that area, what has stood out for you and what is on your heart around working with men and their challenges?
I mean this as organically and innocently as it can possibly sound or be. I really love men. I love how men work together. I love how, even though the machismo and all of those things that we already know, we talk a lot about, right? Like, obviously that's there. But what I really love, and I'll give you a silly example. There's these two guys I know. One of them is super handy. The other one is super not handy at all. And they work together on projects. And the super handy guy pretends that he has no idea the other guy's not handy at all. Right? Up to and including always giving credit that we built this thing. There was no we. There was no we, right? But there's this power in working together and working side by side. And men talk about things differently, right? And it's also really interesting to see, I think about, and I'm not proud of this at all, right? But, when my daughter was little versus when my son was little, I had my son first. And I realized when I had a daughter after my son, right, that when she would get hurt, she'd get a scraped knee or she'd stub her toe or it's okay, mom's going to fix it. Oh, I'll kiss it, right? I had this whole very nurturing way about working with it. But when my son would get hurt, which as a boy was more commonly, we had what we called the shake it off dance.
The shake it off dance.
You're okay, shake it off, you're okay, right? And I didn't think anything about it because, of course, as a mom of a little boy, you're afraid of him being wimpy. You're afraid of what happens when you send your wimpy little boy to the playground or the soccer
field. Around, yeah.
Right? But I also realized that in the style difference, right? I gave my little girl permission to cry and permission to need affection and permission to need to be nurtured. And I didn't give that to my son. So when I look at how men and women operate, I think the brains are different, but I also think that a lot of it is that the parenting is different, right? Yeah. And the socialization is very different. So I've really enjoyed learning about men and learning about how they've developed and how they see each other and they see themselves. But the one piece that really tugs at my heart heavily, especially because we know that men are dying by suicide significantly more than women are, is that when men are in pain, like my little boy, they do not feel that it is safe for them to say, I'm hurting. Right?
Yeah, but just to call it what it is, Sarah, generally it's not safe.
In many instances, David, it's not. And that, I mean, right. And that's the cultural and systems changes that we need to be fighting for. Yeah.
Have you seen that in some of the groups that you've worked with, though, that where there have been some of those cultural changes that you all have been able to shift where they are and can be talking about hurting?
I have to tell you what inspires me and keeps me going, because I find the world a very discouraging place often, is the power of peer support. Is these, especially in these male dominated places, whether it's construction or it's law enforcement, but is seeing these men who have been through hard things themselves, or oftentimes they've lost a coworker or a friend to suicide or opioids, but they have this really deep connection to wanting to be a helper, and they're the ones who are shifting culture.
That's right. That's right. Seeing men exposed. I mean, Craig Miller does it for me. He's got these big, his biceps are like my legs. He's got tattoos, and he's talking about his past trauma and his heart and his soul, and he's doing it without any reservations. And that gives courage for others to do the same thing, Sarah.
Yeah, it does. He used
to. And he's from your neck of the woods, too.
I'm just saying he is from Massachusetts.
Yes.
Bernie, Craig.
His trauma and his emo band. I mean, he would be, have you heard his emo band? Any tapes of those? Oh my gosh.
Sarah, my father died 12 years ago, and I never cried one tear, and it bothered me. Well, I did. I cried when I had to tell my sons. They were little bitty at the time. And somewhere between now and then, I think COVID was certainly, but I got to where, and now my boys make fun of me continuously. We'll go see Wolverine and Deadpool tonight. I'll cry. There's 100% chance there will be something that makes me cry. Yeah. They'll make fun. And I own it now. It's like, I love it, but that sort of, you talked about murdering the soul. We've murdered men's souls, haven't we?
I think we have. And I was just going to ask you, David, when you think about now versus back then when you didn't cry, how's your soul health now versus then?
Yeah.
How's your connection to your deeper self?
Yeah, that's right.
Because I think that being allowed to feel what you feel, right? And it's, I think that's why we have this problem with angry men, is that anger is the one emotion that men have really been allowed to embrace, right? Like, that's okay. Like, don't cry, whatever you do, don't cry. And don't be nervous about something, but it's okay to get mad.
Yeah. I hate to make John cry, or I don't. I love making John cry, but it's time to make John cry. It's trivia again, John. And this trivia is not for Sarah. This trivia is for you.
Okay.
Okay. So last week.
Wait a minute. I'm getting my Kleenex.
It was rough last week, John, in the Cleveland versus Columbus. Today, and Sarah, you lost one of your Bernese Mountain Dogs, and you still have two. So we're going to do a Bernese Mountain Dogs. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Sarah?
You are. Yep, Bernese.
Yep. All right. So Bernese Mountain Dogs trivia, John.
Oh, I'm an expert.
Okay, good. So then you're gonna sweep this, John. Bernese Mountain Dogs. They originate from the Aragon region of the Pyrenees in northeastern Spain.
You telling me, or are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
All right, I'm going to say no to that. I'm going to say no.
Sarah cheated.
No.
Okay. It's the Swiss.
She was following a fly around the room.
They come from the Swiss Alps. Think of Bern, right? The city Bern. Okay. Aragon is from the Lord of the Rings. So number two, Sarah, no hints. John is, John's on his own here. Is the dog, Bernese Mountain Dog, is the dog star of the movie Beethoven in 1992?
Yes.
No, that was a Saint Bernard. Thank you, Sarah. John, you're 1 for 2. Not bad.
Sarah, please. Once if no, twice if yes.
Bernese Mountain Dogs have a double coat, which helps them withstand cold weather.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm assuming, I know when I say this, but go ahead.
I assume they shed, Sarah?
I was going to say we have double vacuums.
Okay. This breed was primarily used for hunting.
No.
They herded cattle. They pulled carts. They were watchdogs.
Mm-hmm.
The dogs are known for their gentle and affectionate nature.
Hell yes.
Sarah was trying so hard to not show that how much she loves her gentle and affectionate and loyal, Sarah, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
They are. But David, I need anyone who's now thinking about a Bernese Mountain Dog to know something. Because that was all the good things. So when we say that they are bred for pulling carts, so they are capable of pulling up to 10 times their own body weight, which means if you have a 130-pound Bernese Mountain Dog, that dog's capable of pulling over 1,000 pounds. Now, the reason this is really important is leash training.
Right.
Hey, I got to just note, Sarah, for those of you who might be watching this, Sarah, you're often doing this with your finger, your forefinger. Yeah, and it just reminds me of Danny in The Shining. So you not only have soul, but you might also have The Shining. Just want to say.
Okay, a couple more here.
E.T.
All right, so Bernese Mountain Dog was not in Beethoven, but it was the dog star in the Pixar movie Up in 2009, John.
Oh, no.
Now, that was a golden retriever, John.
Yes.
All right, that was a true, like a statement.
John, what was the name of the golden retriever in Up? Bonus, John.
I'm going to say Max.
Sarah, do you know?
No.
His name was Doug.
Doug.
D-U-G.
Doug. Yes, Doug. Squirrel.
My next question was a typical Bernese Mountain Dog can weigh up to 50 pounds, but Sarah already outed that one. They often make great therapy dogs, true or false?
Oh, true. Absolutely.
Yeah, they provide comfort and support to people in
They
hospitals,
provide
nursing
soul care.
homes. And here's the bonus. In this 2006 Disney movie, the main character transforms into a Bernese Mountain Dog and struggles to learn basic dog behavior, scratching behind his ear and chasing his tail. 2006 Disney movie, main character actually transforms into a Bernese Mountain Dog. I'm betting Kristen behind the scenes knows the answer to this one.
I would say no.
Sarah, you know?
I don't know.
That was the Shaggy Dog.
Oh,
Yeah. So, Sarah, incredible work that you're doing in the space of men and humans and soul exhaustion. Thanks for tending to our care. And John, that brings us to the incredibly true tales. Well, before we get that, we obviously will be weaving this into our discussion.
Sarah, just brace for potential fake news here, but just hold on tight. Let's see how this goes.
There's no fake news, John. What we do have are the incredibly true tales of behavioral health. And as I was thinking through, John, the work that Sarah is doing in Soul, I did call back our work in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina ravaged Mississippi and Louisiana. We had 120,000 evacuees to Atlanta, who were then, the governor attempted to sort of spread them out a little bit over the state with these super recovery centers, and FEMA came in. Sarah, you've done quite a bit of work with crisis counseling programs and FEMA over the course of your time in Massachusetts, both with COVID and I believe a tornado, Sarah?
that's right. In 2011. Yep.
Yeah. So, John, the phrase that really stuck with me at that time, we sent Keely Foster, who was one of our top executives. She went to the Baton Rouge crisis call center as the New Orleans call center was offline. Was such a jarring time as we were trying to support people who were experiencing evacuation and a lot of trauma. But one of the FEMA people used the phrase that our work in the counseling outreach was a ministry of presence. And that phrase has really gone with me, John, because it attends to that concept, Sarah, of more than human to human interaction, but a calling and souls. But John, incredibly true tale of Behavioral Health Link is for the last 20 years we've been in work. We've all been endeavoring to be engaged in a ministry of presence. With people in pain.
Very true. In fact, that is a very central phrase in disaster mental health care. A guy who was the head of disaster mental health for American Red Cross said to me after 9/11, he said, what I like to tell people who are therapists and mental health workers on the scene for recovery and helping people who've been affected is they want to all do therapy. But I like to say to them, don't just do something, stand there.
Yeah. So, John, that's not the way this sketch works. You're supposed to say that didn't happen.
Well, David, it sounds like it happened, but not the way you described it, did it?
Well, you were there in this case, John.
Oh, I was, yeah.
So, John, this brings us to some plain truth.
You
got something for us?
Yeah, David, I really want to celebrate the incredible work that people like Sarah and our good friend Sally Spencer-Thomas are doing with men in their predominantly male occupational settings, from construction sites to firehouses. No question that nobody has a monopoly on misery and despair, but how self-identified males and females respond to these miserable experiences can be really different. Let's focus on suicide rates, for example. Adult men Adult women have higher rates of suicidal thoughts and attempts than adult men, no question about that, with adolescent girls reporting 2 to 4 times higher rates of suicidal thoughts and attempts than boys. But suicides are a really different matter entirely. And Sarah mentioned this, that in nearly every group from 15 to 74 years old, males are about 3 to 4 times more likely to kill themselves than females. That's not just true here in America. We see similar male to female suicide ratios like this in nations across the globe. And many of our traditional suicide prevention approaches have not been effective in reducing suicides in men. Generally, studies have shown that men with suicidal thoughts are much less likely to seek mental health help than women. And we also see this with our 988 suicide prevention resources, David. Fewer identified males call the line than identified females, and significantly fewer identified males are accessing chat and text services. Now, there's some online services that are designed for male suicide prevention that have shown some promise, like you mentioned mantherapy.org earlier, David, but these resources are not widely used. And it's also odd to me that there are very few of our suicide prevention outreach campaigns focus on men, and maybe more men would use these resources. But in any case, if we're going to do a better job of preventing suicides nationally and internationally, understanding why men are disproportionately more likely to kill themselves than women seems like a pretty essential suicide prevention question that we all need to answer. The fact that men are likely to use more lethal means, such as guns, that argues for more lethal means restriction approaches, for sure. In other non-U.S. nations, however, guns are not as common, and suicide rates among men are still much higher than women. Now, the idea that men are more capable of suicide, that is, more fearless in the face of death, so they'll use more lethal means, is certainly a plausible explanation, too. The idea that men are trained to be less fearful in approaching such fearsome acts as suicide also speaks to the important role of social and cultural influences in these much higher male suicide rates. And Sarah was mentioning this earlier about parenting and our culture. In general, it is really a good idea to explore how socio-cultural forces might explain why specific demographic groups are more affected by certain phenomena than others. So I asked David, ChatGPT, to list the most common characteristics associated with describing masculinity or what it means to be a man. And check this list here, but of course, there are all the usual suspects of male stereotypes popped up. But it's kind of interesting to look at this list from a suicide prevention lens. Yeah. We know that social connectedness is key to reducing suicide, but you'll notice that there is nothing in the list of ideal male attributes that encourages social connectedness. To be fully male, your relationship to others is as a leader, a winner of competitions. You're a fighter to protect the safety of others. You're a provider that can take care of your family, and you're self-reliant. You don't need others to get by. And from an emotional standpoint, you're not really that at all. You are stoic, rational, tough, strong, and brave. Unfortunately, if we struggle to satisfy any of these gender-related expectations like we're all bound to do, we're going to need a little social safety net, others to support us. When I was a boy, no one told me that if I'm going to thrive, I'm also going to need to develop a lot of the skills that ChatGPT lists for femininity, such as empathy and nurturing, emotional expressiveness, sensitivity, grace and poise, communication, cooperation, and community. I had to learn how valuable these attributes were to me on my own. I learned that these skills allow us guys to attract people who will want to be there for us, and that they help us be part of a team, a crew, to feel accepted, to be liked, loved by teammates, colleagues, friends, family, and romantic partners. On the other hand, if we're only measuring our worth through these traditionally male stereotypes, we're going to feel that we've failed as leaders, providers, protectors, or seen as losers or weak, and we need to win or be strong. We can feel very alone in these circumstances and filled with shame if we've disappointed all of these measures of attributes that are typically associated with being a guy. Our younger generations today, they've staged a righteous revolution against the rigidity of binary gender identities. Now, this little ChatGPT exercise reminds me that it's also time to challenge the more insidious tyranny of gender binary expectations in our culture and celebrate all of these characteristics as basic human attributes that are gender neutral and can be desirable in many, but not all contexts, depending on the situation. But broad scale culture change is a monumental challenge. So perhaps we can have more immediate successes in preventing male suicides by working directly with predominantly male cultures, just as Sarah and Sally do routinely. Focusing efforts in the construction industry, police, firefighting, athletic leagues, farming and agriculture, and veterans in the military are excellent approaches. When us guys are suffering, just as you were saying, Sarah, who do we turn to? Turn to our friends and our colleagues. And while we don't ask for help very often, we're very happy to give it. So if we are prodded to check on our buddies, ask them how they're doing, especially after something has changed in their life, whether it's a loss of a job, a loved one, a breakup, or a new thing like a new home, a new job, or spouse or baby, any change can be tough. And if you've been through something similar before, be sure to share how it was for you when you went through it, and who and what helped you get through that tough change. Sally and Sarah, along with their partner Eduardo Vega, leverage peer supports, just as you were describing, buddies in male cultures, Sarah, to enhance the safety and social connectedness of us guys. The military and the VA are doing the same. Now, there's a brief snippet of this commercial that is taken from an ad council effort that the VA paid for that is really, you should see the whole ad council ad. I'm just going to show the 7 seconds, but it really gives, I think, a perfect example of what we're trying to accomplish in our brief engagements with men to create this opportunity for connectedness.
I'll figure it out. I know you will. But you don't have to do it alone. That's all I'm saying. If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Well, you got to check out this whole video. It's 30 seconds of absolute gold, because the secrets to making it work with men are all in this video. Men are just often more comfortable talking about their concerns while performing a task or playing a game together, not just talking face to face. In this video, you'll see that the friend, they're building something together. They're playing a game. In this case, they're building a fence together. And the friend invites his buddy to receive his help. And he reminds the buddy that he doesn't have to go through these tough things alone. And he also mentions in the video that, he also needed help when his Felicia left him. He left the invitation on the table, and the buddy said he'd look into it, basically creating a foot in the door for future check-ins with each other. And this is the kind of thing that Sarah and Sally are teaching men to do routinely, one culture at a time. So thank you all for helping us, Sarah. And I hope more people spread the word about your work so more tough guys can help each other get through tough times, and more nice guys can finish not first, not last, but together. David, that's a wrap.
John and Sarah, that's some plain truth and a real lifeline. Huge thanks to our guest and friend, Sarah Ward Gaer today. And Sarah, thank you for your continued ministry of presence with men and humans, for the work you and Sally and others are doing. And we hope you'll all be sure to join us next week when our guest will be Eric Hipple, former NFL quarterback and coincidentally author of the book, Real Men Cry. Thanks for letting you draw us in, for letting us draw you in this week again. Look forward to having you on another podcast around the navigation of the currents of crisis care. And until then, remember, every call, every story, every life matters. Stay connected, stay supportive, and we'll see you on the next Lifelines.
Thanks, Soul Sister.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.